Hey guys, Drifter here. The Steam Machine is a better Xbox than Microsoft could ever hope to make. So if you consider the fact that Microsoft has been pushing for decades now to transform Xbox into a multifaceted living room entertainment experience that integrates with certain PC functionalities, then the Steam Machine is basically the Xbox she tells you not to worry about. I know I'm a little bit behind on discussing this topic, but seeing how there's about a year until full release, I believe there's still plenty of time for analysis and opinion. And my opinion is that this thing is going to blow Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo and all of these companies that do consoles right out of the water, and it's going to be very difficult for any of them to overcome the power of the Steam Machine. The only reasonable competitor to the Steam Machine might be the Nintendo Switch, just because they're kind of an entirely different experience, a different audience, mostly catering toward children, and different use cases, and slightly different niche, but the Steam Deck and new Steam controllers do a lot of Switch-like activities as well. I'm really excited about this product and will probably buy one for my home along with the new controller, and definitely the new Steam VR headset called the Steam Frame, which we're going to talk about today later in the video. But for now, let's talk about the Steam Machine itself. It's an ultra-compact Linux-based living room computer that fits inside of a 6 by 6 inch box. 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches, tiny little box about that big. It'll sit on your living room shelf. I really want to emphasize that a 6-inch PC is ultra tiny and significantly smaller than most at-home mini PC builds, and I can also respect the fact that Valve decided to name their product the Steam Machine because tons of people were already making these little micro-build PCs for their living rooms just to be pseudo-consoles and run Steam, and were most often called Steam Machines. There are some downsides to the Steam Machine that we'll talk about, especially with its Linux-based operating system not supporting kernel-level anti-cheat, but we'll circle back around on that in a minute after we talk about the specs. For CPU, it has a semi-custom AMD Zen 4 6C/12T. It'll go up to about 8.4 gigahertz. For GPU, we're looking at a semi-custom AMD RDNA 28CU 8 gigabytes of DDR6 VRAM. Its standard RAM is 16 gigabytes of DDR5. It has a 512 or 2 terabyte NVMe SSD memory, but that can be upgraded. And in terms of raw power, this puts the Steam Machine at theoretically slightly less powerful than a current PlayStation 5, which is already very powerful. This initially drew a lot of criticism from PC elitists and even console gamers alike, but I think that it misses a few core concepts that are important to the Steam Machine. It's like a quarter of the size of any console. The Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 are like home servers. The PlayStation is massive. The Xbox was so big they sort of had to embrace the mini fridge going on. And thirdly, as one of the Valve engineers pointed out, this level of performance is better than what about 70% of current Steam users are running. So for 70% of users, it's a significant upgrade. And it's important to note that Valve has unique insights into the hardware capabilities of its players and, because of their size, the PC industry in general. So Valve knows more than probably anybody on the planet about how many devices this will outperform, and according to them, it's greater than 2/3 of what their current customers are already using. Now, it's not going to perform as good as a $6,000 Giga PC that's built with all of the latest hardware and overclocked to the maximum, but it is going to perform better than what most people have at home and on par with most consoles. We're definitely going to circle back on that later, but it's also extremely important to note that Valve has made some impressive software changes to this that will likely allow it to squeeze out extra performance beyond what we would expect from the hardware, with one notable exception. It's probably not going to run Fortnite, it's probably not going to run EA or Call of Duty or Activision games because its operating system does not support kernel-level anti-cheat. So some games will just be patently incompatible here, which is unfortunate, but that might be changing in the future. I don't think kernel-level anti-cheat is really preventing many cheaters. It has an impressive amount of ports on it. Beyond being able to upgrade the NVMe, you can insert a high-speed micro SD card slot. There's a DisplayPort 1.4 that'll go up to 4K 240 or 8K 60 Hz. It supports HDR, FreeSync, daisy chaining. It has an HDMI 2.0 port, not a 2.1, just an old 2.0 for older monitors and older games. It has a USB 3.2, two USB 3s, and two USB 2s, but no Thunderbolt. And I have a lot of opinions on this. Firstly, I love that there's a micro SD card slot, which gives storage options beyond the NVMe. Even potentially you could install a game or copy a game onto an SD card, go to a friend's house that has the Steam machine, just stick the card in, you don't have to download anything, it's just there ready to play. The DisplayPort and HDMI port are fantastic and exceed the capabilities of most people's monitors. The 5 USB ports are also powerful, and I like that they included some old USB 2 ports because some devices are just incompatible with USB 3, and when we're talking about compatibility here, I'm thinking about things like the old school Logitech C920 webcam, which is what this video is recorded on. Those things, while USB 3 compatible, just work better on the USB 2s that they were designed for, which is why every time I buy a new computer, I make sure that they have a couple of old USB 2s for that compatibility, though I do admit the lack of Thunderbolt connection is a bit surprising here. I would be remiss to not mention that all of this comes with a 100% Steam compatibility, and it'll play almost all of the games that are already on the platform, many of which you're going to already own. It's by far the biggest digital gaming marketplace on the planet, and that's doubly true if you want to count it for PC gaming only. So the moment you plug it in, you're pretty much already set up to play all of your favorite games unless there's a kernel level anti-cheat problem. And every single convenient feature that Steam has ever implemented on their Steam OS will be on the Steam machine on this little box as well. And I think that's wonderful because Valve is living up to their motto of providing a service that's better than what piracy could hope to offer. To tie it back into the main topic, this is the kind of thing that Xbox wanted to make with the Series X. Honestly, it's the kind of thing that Xbox wanted to make with the Xbox One and the Kinect attachment that you could just talk to and give commands, but neither of those devices properly integrated with broader internet services, though I do admit the Xbox Series X did a much better job at it. I think the downside is that almost everything on an Xbox runs through Microsoft products and services, which not that many people use compared to Steam, Discord, and other publicly available software. So for example, Microsoft will allow you to install certain apps on your Series X. They're all verified to be safe by Microsoft, vertically integrated, and a little bit appified for lack of a better word, but it's very convenient. You can do a lot on the Xbox Series X, but it's all within the Microsoft-approved ecosystem. The Steam machine, in contrast, runs Steam OS, which allows you to swap over to desktop mode and run pretty much anything you want as if it's a regular computer, and especially through a browser, which gives you a pretty insane amount of flexibility, as long as you're not trying to run Fortnite. And don't forget that Steam Link and Steam streaming services outperform basically everything else on the market. We haven't even mentioned Sony yet. We're kind of like making fun of Microsoft, but Sony is so far behind they're not even worth mentioning in this particular discussion. Your Steam machine could stream games to any compatible device or screen in your house, just your phone or whatever. I know that Xbox has similar things right now, but Steam has a much greater degree of compatibility and reliability. Sony is so far behind. They're still trying to do PC cross-buy as a way of changing things up, and they have a long way to go. It'd be pretty cool if that was the only thing to talk about in this video, but we've actually got two more really awesome Steam hardware releases that I would love to talk about. We're going to do their new controller first, and then talk quite a lot about the Steam Frame VR headset. The Steam controller has a number of impressive features that make it better than default gaming controllers right now. Honestly, they might be better than Scuff or Battle Beavers as well. So right off the rip, the new controllers have a magnetic charging puck that charges the controller, but also provides an extremely fast wireless connection to the Steam machine itself. But don't worry, if you don't want to fool with that, the Steam controller supports Bluetooth and USB in case you just want to use more standard compatibility on the Steam machine or your regular PC. So right out of the box, it has a pretty huge degree of compatibility. The thumbsticks are magnetic, which is insane because magnetic sticks have a much higher degree of precision and durability than standard ones. The sticks support capacitive touch for motion controls, which is very cool. We've got capacitive touches on the front. There's a capacitive touch grip on the side where you can squeeze the outer handles. The controller will recognize that you're gripping it and immediately swap to taking inputs from when you're like tilting the controller. So for example, in Battlefield, you could be using your controller on the ground to run around and shoot people, then hop into a car, squeeze the sensors, and just steer like you're playing a racing game because it has haptic inputs like that. absolutely mental. It reminds me a lot of when the PlayStation 4 and 5 launched. They were very, especially PlayStation 4, they were very big on these sort of motion control inputs on the controller, and it looks like that, but better. Valve seems to have copied the Nintendo Switch's haptic rumble, which allows for three-dimensional and complex rumble features to kind of give you the sensation that maybe things are moving inside your controller, or at just a more complex rumble sensation. There's two touchpads on the front, which I'm actually a little bit worried about. One of the few criticisms I would have is that I'm worried people are going to kind of slide their fingers over and accidentally input things when they maybe didn't intend to. There are 4 buttons on the back that are extremely reminiscent of a SCUF or the Xbox Elite controllers that you can bind to just whatever you want. So I hope Steam doesn't get sued, because I know SCUF has a patent on those paddles and back buttons, and they've used it before. So this is an extremely high-end controller that provides a wide degree of compatibility and basically every single next-generation controller feature that you can think of, along with full support from most games on Steam, especially moving forward. So I think it's very unlikely that Microsoft, Sony, SCUF, or any other controller company can manufacture something this good in time to be competitive. But now I want to move into the video that I'm actually genuinely the most excited about. It's time to talk about the Steam Frame, which is their next generation VR headset. It's set to replace the Valve Index. So yeah, the Index is an amazing product. It's provided some incredibly high quality VR gameplay experiences, and its hand tracking was second to none when it first came out. But it is expensive, it's a bit on the bulky side, and it was ultimately considered sort of a hobbyist item instead of a standard one. Well, Valve decided to go a little bit more in the MetaQuest 3 direction and make their new headset simpler, smaller, wireless, and a lot cheaper, at least by current estimations. Product prices may change because, tariffs and yay, tariffs. We're not going to get into the politics of it all here, but the Steam Frame is a fraction of the size of most major VR headsets and a fraction of their weight. As I mentioned before, it's wireless and it uses cameras to do full-scale room tracking, so you don't have to have those gigantic tracking boxes set up in the corners of your ceiling. From everything that I can tell, it operates a lot like the MetaQuest 3 or 3S, except better. The controllers for it, though, are shamelessly inspired by the MetaQuest, and Valve seems to be willing to acknowledge that to the point of saying, if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. The headset supports standalone play as well, so you can use it out and about, on the bus, in a plane, away from home without the Steam box. Some games will just load and play in the headset itself, or you can plug in a custom USB dongle, which is like the fattest USB dongle I've ever seen, into the Steam machine, and that provides an ultra fast, I believe it's 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi signal, which is one of the least used bands, to broadcast video from your Steam machine directly to your headset. But that's not all that it does. I find that to be a little bit reductive to say, oh, plug in the USB and it goes wireless. I want to give a huge, massive, biggest shout out I can possibly give to whoever on the Valve team came up with the idea of foveated streaming, as in FOV or field of view aided streaming, because transferring 4K resolution gameplay on 2 lenses at frame rates greater than 120 FPS via wireless is difficult, and it's very bandwidth intensive. So one of the engineers at Valve came up with the brilliant idea to use the cameras that are inside the headset that track your eyes, which we haven't even had time to fully talk about yet, to know what part of the lens you're looking at, so that the Steam machine knows to render only the parts you're looking at in the highest quality, but allow for the bitrate and overall quality to drop on the edges of your vision. To be clear, this is not saying that the edges of the lenses on the new headset are going to be blurry, but rather the headset has a bunch of tiny cameras on the inside that track your eye movement and direction down to the actual millisecond, so it knows what part of the lens you're currently looking at. So for example, if you want to look at something up and to the left, like maybe something kind of up in the sky in VR or over your head, the system will immediately know to render the upper left portion of the frame in as high a quality as possible, but the rest of the lens is allowed to be rendered in a lower portion, a lower quality with lower bit rate, so the field of view that you're not looking at is just sort of like low bit rate. In doing so, they managed to save a ridiculous amount of system bandwidth and wireless transmission bandwidth. So that means they can send a vastly superior wireless experience through their headsets while overcoming the bandwidth constraints that would blow up most other pieces of technology. I think that's downright brilliant. PlayStation VR can't compete with this in any capacity. I know the PlayStation VR 2 is pretty new and fun, but it's also very niche and it doesn't have a fraction of these kind of cool features or game support. I don't think Microsoft has any sort of VR headset planned in its future. Facebook and Apple are currently struggling to find just the right markets for their Meta Quest and Apple Vision Pro respectively. Apple Vision Pro taking some huge L's. But all indications point toward the new Steam Frame headset being approximately a $500 headset, which, while a little bit more expensive than some of the more mainstream competitors, it vastly outperforms them in terms of features. Every other VR headset company on the planet should be scared right now. I'm serious about that. So yeah, I've been shamelessly glazing Valve and their hardware here, but I think it's well deserved. Valve just came out of nowhere and hit a home run with all of this. They made a cheaper and better console with a wider degree of compatibility and features than any other console on the market. They're releasing a new controller that is likely to be better than any controller on the market for several years to come. And they're releasing a new VR headset with never-before-seen technology that also outperforms just about everything else on the market that's under $2,000, but with a much simpler setup and compatibility. There are definitely insane VR headsets out there that can outperform the new Steam Frame. They cost thousands of dollars. They have weird compatibility. Setup is complicated. This one will outperform anything that's not in the sort of the hobbyist range. Xbox currently has nothing to compete with this, and I've been talking about how their system is going to be more of a living room PC premium kind of experience. But if I were them, I would be worried because this is basically what they wanted to sell, but earlier and better. Sony is eons behind in this regard. I mean, I haven't talked about them much just because they're so far behind. They're like, hey guys, you can do cross-buy on PC. Woo! There's no chance they're going to catch up and have much better than a standard console in the future. Meta isn't exactly a direct competitor. They're not a gaming company, but they should be concerned about losing their VR headset dominance here. I think the only company that doesn't have to be concerned about this, not tremendously, is Nintendo. Nintendo is just competing in a very different niche, so they don't have to sweat so much. So I, for one, am very excited for the new Steam machine. This video has been nothing but positivity. I think it looks very hype. I'm very excited to see how it all performs. Hopefully by the time it comes out, I will have already had my spinal surgery completed. I might have had arm surgery already. I don't even know. I should be able to sit on the couch and enjoy VR and controller play like never before. So I'm excited. Guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.